Well, I just come out of college where the last 2 years I'd averaged close to 20 points a game. And then going to, my whole thought was, I'm going to the NBA. I talked to my agent and I said, look, please give me one more shot at the NBA. Like, I'd played really well and all was set for me to go back over to the States and sign with the Jazz for the rest of the season. But the second last game of the regular season with Adelaide, I think it was against Perth. The last minute of the game, I just had a little knock on my leg. And, I just felt a pain that I'd never felt before. Sure enough, get the MRI. They say, yeah, you've got a fractured, I think it was tibia, the outside bone on my right leg. And I said, okay, cool. So what's the rehab? They said, yeah, you'll be out 8 to 10 weeks. You have to have, no pressure on it. You have to just sort of have your leg up. And, you can't walk, jog or run for at least 8 weeks. Anyway, that same afternoon, my agent called me. Hey, Brock, what's your address? The Jazz are going to FedEx over your contract for the rest of the season. And my heart just sank. I just got this news that I'm out for 10 weeks and then they want me over there next week. And, my lifelong goal was to go over there, play, It's still crazy to think about. I still remember where I was, the feeling that I had in my heart when I got that phone call saying I was out for that long, and I still have the FedEx envelope in my bedroom at my parents' house right now with inside, rest of the season contract with the Jazz. But anyway, wasn't meant to be, and I'm very grateful for the steps that I was able to make after that and not going to the NBA.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You will hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi, freedom fighters. Have you had a dream or a lifelong goal that you've been working on for years, only to see your dream shattered or your goal missed due to unexpected circumstances that are beyond your control? And when was the last time that your plans were dashed by an unforeseen tragedy? When was the last time that someone you relied on and trusted betrayed you or let you down? Maybe you lost your job. Perhaps a close relationship has ended or you've lost a loved one. Perhaps you've hit a brick wall on an important project or an undertaking and you just don't know what else you can do. Or something has simply failed and despite all of your work, you just can't see another solution. For better or worse, we've all had these moments during our lifetime and we're likely to experience many more of them. So how do these moments make you feel? When something out of your control suddenly and unexpectedly prevents you from fulfilling your dream or doing what you want to do. Were you shattered? Did you ask yourself, why me? How can this happen to me? Come on, this can't be happening. Not now. Or you rattled off and shouted a chain of swear words while you kicked the nearest something. How angry were you? And did you give up? Chances are you experienced intense negative emotions and you felt very left down, dejected, deflated, and disappointed. And then what? Did you stop pursuing your goal? Did you give up on your dreams? Did you walk away in disgust, never to pursue that goal again? Now, this is often the result. But what if there's a different way and a better way of reacting and responding? A way and an approach that was first developed by the ancients in Greece over 2,300 years ago, and has largely been forgotten by most of us and buried under the dust of time. But it's an approach that's actually more relevant today than what it was then. I'm talking about what Ryan Holiday describes in his awesome must-read book, The Obstacle is the Way, as Amor Fati. Holiday's great book on how to live in order to achieve sustainable success is based on the ancient Greek philosophy of Stoicism, and it revolves around the book of Meditations, penned by one of the greatest Roman emperors, Marcus Aurelius, that has miraculously survived to this day and has been the inspiration for many great men and women throughout the millennia. And I'm going to draw on and borrow from Ryan Holiday's work in this episode as inspiration to assist you in better managing life's inevitable challenges. We're talking here about embracing obstacles as opportunities and cultivating resilience as a key ingredient to achievement in any endeavour. So how do you cultivate resilience based on persistence and perseverance? It starts with being able to distinguish between what is up to us and what's not up to us, between the things that we can control and the things we can't control. If someone insults you, you can't control what others say about you, but you can choose to control how you respond, which is our uniquely human capability. And as powerless as we sometimes feel, as frustrating as it is when things don't go our way, as unfair as it is when fate deals us what we think's a bad hand, we always retain the power to choose our response, our attitude, our emotions, our perspective, our creativity, our judgments, and our opinions. As Shakespeare says in Hamlet, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. We have the ultimate power of choice to decide how we respond. And while breaking the bad habits of our natural embedded negative responses is not easy, it's actually the easiest part, because it's what you do next that will make or break your future. In this regard, Holiday refers to the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who said that every event has two handles, one by which it can be carried and one by which it can't. Epictetus said that if someone does you wrong, don't grab it by his wronging, because this is the handle that is incapable of lifting. Instead, choose the other handle, where that someone is your friend, and you can raise the handle together, choosing the handle that carries. In this way, when adversity inevitably strikes, whether it's a pandemic or a recession that hits, anything where you suffer setbacks, struggles, uncertainties, or inconveniences, whatever it is, the critical question is, which handle will you grab? The one of resentment, of bitterness, of anger, of unfairness, or the opposite handle of forgiveness, of strength, of fortitude, of looking for the good, of looking for what we might do with what has happened? Are you going to grasp the problem or the opportunity? Are you going to respond with thoughts that this is unfair, that you have the right to be angry, or that you have the power to move on? That there's always a lesson or some good hiding within or around the issue or the challenge at hand. You have to actively look for the opportunity and you have to grab hold of it. This is how the sustainably successful manage to thrive in life. All you can do is let go and move on. Epictetus called this the art of acquiescence, surrendering to fate and accepting that there's a larger plan. But don't misinterpret this as resignation, and it's not pessimism or dejected acceptance. It's bold optimism fused with determination, the recognition that there's more at work behind the scenes, that we know there's a bigger picture that we just can't see, something higher and bigger than ourselves that doesn't make us weak, but rather it makes us more powerful and unstoppable in every human way. This approach is at the base of what Holiday refers to as the Stoics' idea of Amor Fati. And no, Amor Fati isn't a French translation of someone with a big flatulence problem. It's the idea of embracing your fate and loving your fate. This goes far deeper and much further than just accepting your fate. This is about embracing whatever happens to you and actually loving it, regardless of whether it's perceived by you as good or bad. Amor Fati is about turning what you have to do in what you get to do, to turn what life throws at you into fuel for the fire that's going to make you great. When you practice Amor Fati, you have to start by repeating it like a mantra to yourself. Amor Fati is the practice of loving everything that happens, not just accepting it, not just tolerating it, but really leaning into it by going, this is for me, I chose this, I've wanted it this way, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So when you're stuck in traffic, you say, Amor Fati, I love it. When you're criticised by a troll on Facebook, when your car won't start when you're running late for a meeting, Amor Fati, I love it. When you can't find your car keys or your mobile phone, Amor Fati, I love it. When you get a cold or an annoying flu, Amor Fati, I love it. When your area goes into lockdown, Amor Fati, I love it. When you're injured just before a big game, when you've lost your job or your work just dries up, Amor Fati, I love it. I'm going to be better for this happening to me. I'm alive, I feel this, I'm going to make the most of it. Keep saying to yourself, Amor Fati, I love it. Use this as a trigger to remind yourself that no amount of anger, no amount of resentment, no amount of frustration is going to change things or improve your situation. In fact, quite the contrary. When you flip your thinking to what can you take from this, then that's what Amor Fati is. You use every situation as fuel to become better from it and become improved by it. If you've got cancer, you're disabled, you're white or you're black, you're short or you're tall, you're rich or you're poor, Amor Fati, I love it. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to be better for this happening to me. And the most inspiring example of Amor Fati that really resonates with me is that of Theodore Roosevelt. Now, you probably know that Theodore Roosevelt, or Teddy, or TR, as he was commonly called, was an American statesman, a conservationist, a naturalist, a historian, a writer, and Nobel Prize winner who became the 26th and the youngest ever president of the United States. What you probably don't know is that Theodore Roosevelt started life suffering chronic, life-threatening asthma when he was a child, a chronic breathing disorder that regularly and nearly cost him his life and severely restricted what he could and couldn't do. Quoting from Holiday, by age 12, Theodore Roosevelt had spent almost every day of his short life struggling with horrible asthma. His life hung in a precarious balance. The attacks were an almost nightly near-death experience. Tall, gangly and frail, the slightest exertion would have upset the entire balance and leave him bedridden for weeks. One day his father came into his room and delivered a message that would change the boy's life. Theodore, you have the mind, but you haven't got the body. I'm going to give you the tools to make your body. It's going to be hard drudgery, and I think you have the determination to go through with it. Now, you'd think that this would be lost on a child, and especially a fragile one. But according to Roosevelt's younger sister, who witnessed the conversation, it wasn't. His response, using what would become his trademark cheerful grit, was to look at his father and say with determination, I'll make my body. So, at their home gym that his father built, young Teddy proceeded to work out feverishly every day for the next 5 years, slowly building muscle and strengthening his upper body against his weak lungs and for the future. By his early 20s, the battle against asthma was essentially over. He'd worked, almost literally, that weakness out of his body. And that gym work prepared a physically weak but smart young boy for the uniquely challenging course on which the nation and the world were about to embark. It was the beginning of his preparation for and fulfillment of what he would later call the strenuous life. And for Roosevelt, life threw a lot at him. He lost his wife and his mother in rapid succession. He faced powerful, entrenched political enemies who despised his progressive agenda. He was dealt defeat in elections. The nation was embroiled in foreign wars, and he survived several nearly fatal assassination attempts. But he was equipped for it all because of his early training, and because he kept at it every single day. What about you? Are you similarly prepared? Could you actually handle yourself if things suddenly got worse? Now, in this day and age, we often take weakness for granted. We assume that the way we're born is the way we simply are, that our disadvantages are permanent, and then we atrophy from there. And for my liking, that's not necessarily the best recipe for the difficulties of life. Not everyone accepts their bad start in life. They remake their bodies and their lives with activities and exercise. They prepare themselves for the hard road. It's what I often and keep referring to as the integration between self, health and wealth. And the reason that Theodore Roosevelt's resilience and perseverance moves me so much is that it echoes my own journey. When I was a child, I suffered chronic asthma. One of my earliest memories is waking up in the middle of every night not being able to breathe. And it really scared me because I just couldn't understand why. Why couldn't I breathe? Now, if you've ever had to hold your breath underwater for a long period of time, or you've been in a dust-filled room or forced to inhale exhaust fumes while trying to breathe, as you gasp, wheeze and cough as you struggle to get enough air, then you've got some idea of what it's like to suffer asthma 24/7. And not only was I constantly wheezing, coughing and gasping for breath, but it affected me physically and severely limited what I could do. In restricting my breathing, it also restricted everything else in my life, as breathing is the foundation of our energy and something that most of us just take for granted. I became punk-chested and struggled to participate or keep up with other kids in anything that required any form of physical exertion. Running, climbing, riding a bike, they were all challenging most of the time. And there was a period of a few years when we were living in Echuca in country Victoria that I would spend at least 4 out of every 7 days in bed wheezing and feeling as weak as a feather with no energy to even lift my head off the pillow. I was constantly in and out of hospital relying on oxygen to get me through. And anything and everything would set off an asthma attack. A dusty room, the pollen from flowers and grass, the smell of wheat or oats, if I got cold, if I felt enclosed in a small or dark space, if I was worried about something, and I used to worry a lot about pretty much everything, it just seemed like everything was an asthma trigger. And this debilitating condition plagued me throughout all of my primary school days. In fact, our family doctor told my parents that if we didn't move from the wheat belt region, I'd be dead and an old man by the time I was 15. However, there was an upside. I had plenty of time to read, draw and create, and I became an avid reader, the epitome of a nerd and an absolute total bookworm, which is how I stumbled across the initial story of Theodore Roosevelt, and his example inspired and motivated me. I realised that I needed to embrace my asthma as an opportunity, not an obstacle. So I got to work. I started swimming 3 nights a week and spent hours thrashing out the kilometres in the pool. And then I discovered a love of running. Over a gruelling, relentless 5 years, I transformed my body and my breathing capacity from a punk-chested runt into a competent swimmer, a strong runner, and captain of our local field hockey team. And when I look back, I realise that suffering asthma has helped me to sharpen the sword and develop the daily disciplines, the patience, the persistence, the perseverance and the resilience to embrace all of life's obstacles as learning opportunities, and to recognise that sustainable success is a long-term journey built on thousands of constant tiny incremental steps and improvements over a long period of time. That no never means no. It just means find another and often better way. So here are a few of my favourite immortal Teddy TR quotes that have become my mantra and my motivational mottos over the years. Here's the first one. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But he who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And here's one of his short and sharp and really good eye-openers. If you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't sit for a month. And this TR quote has always motivated me. Courage is not having the strength to go on. It's going on when you don't have the strength. And this final one has become our know-how property finance company credo. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Teddy Roosevelt didn't whine, he didn't complain, he didn't point the finger. He just moved on and just kept going. And that's what we have to do with every obstacle that we face, whether it's big or small, fair or unfair, tragic or triumph, chosen or unchosen. We constantly say, Amor Fati, I love it all. And we use our obstacles as opportunities, as fuel to become better. This is the formula for greatness that Ryan Holiday captures in his book, The Obstacle is the Way. So remember, my friends, Amor Fati, I love it. Whenever we face what seems like a disaster, it's like, sure, yeah, I didn't want this to happen. Sure, I would have chosen for this not to have happened. And sure, it's not even my fault that this has happened. But now that it's my fate, the idea of Amor Fati means I love this. It was chosen for me. And now I'm going to make it something that I can be proud of. I'm going to make it something that at least has some advantages, if not for me, then at least for the other people around me. And that's how the ancient Stoics turned disaster into opportunity. A Stoic believes that the obstacle is the way. A Stoic doesn't just accept their fate, but loves it and embraces it with Amor Fati. When anyone would say, we've got a problem, my late great father-in-law George Nagy would always say, why? Did someone die? If not, we don't have a problem. We've just got an obstacle to overcome. So here's your Amor Fati challenge. Think back to someone who's really hurt you and betrayed you or let you down in a big way. It might be a lover, a family member, a friend, a work colleague, or a business partner. And here's your challenge. Echoing and paraphrasing Mark Aurelius's immortal words, I want you to forgive someone who has wronged you, remain a friend to someone who has transgressed your friendship, or to continue faithful to someone who has broken your faith. Pick up the phone and call them, meet them for coffee, or have lunch with them. Now this won't be easy, but I guarantee this will relieve your soul. Many years ago, as a young, ambitious and quite naive architect, I was absolutely taken to the cleaners by a business partner who left me heavily in debt and forced to start again at the grand old age of 24. For many years I harboured ill feelings of anger and betrayal towards him, and these negative thoughts and feelings were like an acidic cancer that was eating me from the inside out. So I decided to reach out to him. We had lunch together and we essentially cleared the air. Now, I'll never forget what he did, but I forgave him for what had happened, and an amazing weight lifted off my shoulders that has cleared my path ever since. So here's your Amor Fati challenge. Reach out and catch up with someone who's wronged you and forgive them. And let me know how you go and how you feel afterwards by emailing me at bushy@knowhowproperty.com.au, because I guarantee you'll be surprised at how much better you feel. As the famous Benjamin Franklin once said, the things which hurt instruct. So instead of focusing on how we can reduce adversity and our obstacles in our life, flip your thinking to how do we figure out how to take advantage of this situation, and how do we learn to seize the events that paralyse everyone else. Start developing the Stoics' form of unshakable optimism that transforms obstacles into opportunities by constantly responding with Amor Fati. I love it. Because, as Ryan Holiday captured so well, the impediment to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. Amor Fati, my friends. And as you heard in the opening snippet of today's great conversation, there's no better example of Amor Fati than today's guest, Brock Motum. Despite missing out on achieving his lifelong goal of playing in the coveted American National Basketball Association, or the NBA, due to his untimely injury, Brock remains one of Australia's top basketballers, who's not only thriving as an athlete on the global stage right now, but also investing into the future of his young family. In a hyper-competitive sport where your future is only as good as your performance in the next game, he continues to enjoy a long and rewarding career over many years. As an international basketballer and Olympian, with a passion for investing and for paying it forward. Brock's had and continues to have great success playing in Europe, the United States and Australia. He's represented his country with the Australian Boomers, playing in the 2016 Olympic Games and the 2014 World Cup. At club level, Brock currently plays with Galatasaray in Turkey, and he's been playing in the Euro League for over the last 6 years, where he's been a cup and league champion in both the Lithuanian and the Turkish leagues. As a boy from the bush in Queensland, Brock made the Australian NBL first team in 2014-15, after initially making a name for himself in the US college system as captain and scoring champion at Washington State University. But Brock's much more than an athlete. He gained qualifications in psychology from Washington State and has a strong interest in investing, not just in his own wealth, but in other people. Brock loves looking for opportunities to pay it forward, including supporting and building up family, friends, and even random people on the street through random acts of kindness. Brock is always looking for new ways and opportunities to create and grow wealth, which he talks about in our great conversation today. He shares a number of stories and important insights. He answers your life and investment questions that include: why is goal setting important? How is your psychological outlook important to your success? What do you need to do to make it? He shares his winning rituals and habits. We discuss the difference between being great versus good. He outlines his definition of financial freedom and why pay yourself first. He goes over what he learned from training alongside the famous NBA champion Klay Thompson, so listen out for that. And he outlines the importance of self-belief and a high work ethic. Now, I'm proud to work with a number of Australia's top basketballers like Brock through our Know How Property Finances partnership with the Australian Basketball Players Association. I really love this initiative because the association has identified the need to help athletes to capitalise on their great but often short-lived wealth potential. And as we'll hear from Brock, property is a great vehicle to help athletes build the life they love beyond their sporting careers. And we've built a program to help them and you do just that. And remember, this isn't just for elite athletes. If you want to find out more about how property can help set you up to build the life that you really want, get in touch with us at knowhowproperty.com.au and we'll talk you through your next steps. In the meantime, Remember to approach every day and every situation with Amor Fati, freedom fighters. And now enjoy this great conversation with Brock Motum. Hi, freedom fighters. Now, in our role as financial wellbeing advisors to the Australian Basketball Players Association, we get to help professionals in all leagues to win the game of life both on and off the court. And despite the fame and the glory that we get to experience on game day, for most of the dedicated professionals who give all of their blood, sweat and tears to this dog-eat-dog sport, we are only really as good as your next game. This is no easy feat. And professional sport is really a microcosm of life. So to deep dive into the rough and tumble of this great game, we have the rare pleasure of doing a deep dive conversation with one of the game's greats today. So welcome, and let's get invested, Brock.
Thanks a lot for having me, Bushy.
Yeah, really looking forward to our chat today, mate, and very generous of you to spend some time, because I know you're sitting there somewhere in Istanbul at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. Here for my third year and loving it. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be on here with you, and I'm looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, me too, mate. Very generous of you to take the time. Mate, you're extremely well known in basketball quarters, but for those listeners who perhaps don't know much about Brock Motum, give us a rundown on who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do, mate.
Yeah, well, I'm a professional basketballer. I'm going into this is my 8th season now that I've been playing professionally. I grew up in Brisbane. I went to university in the States, and yeah, like I said, I played overseas for 8 years, and hopefully, God willing, my body stays healthy. I'll play for another 8 years too.
Yeah, and that's always a challenge, isn't it, mate, is making sure the body keeps up with the brain.
Yeah, that's it. As long as I can stay healthy, hopefully I can keep going.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Great. Well, what I'd love to do, mate, really, is to go for a walk through that journey in a little bit more detail if we can, and focus in on where have you invested your time, your energy and your money over your life journey so far, and talk about why you've done what you've done and how that's led you how that's led you to where you are now, mate.
Yeah, well, I guess the biggest investment that I've done is, to get where I am, is time on the basketball court. I think that's been the biggest thing for me. Knowing that when I was younger, I don't know, maybe I was 11 or 12, I was playing basketball, one of those school carnivals that you play for your region or whatever. Yeah. And I thought, sweet, I'm off school, I'm playing basketball, this is pretty cool. And I just turned to my mum and I said, Mum, if I can do this for the rest of my life, I'll be set. I was thinking, if I can just play basketball and not have to go to school, I'm good. So I guess it was from that day I sort of set the goal that basketball is what I wanted to do. And I've been fortunate enough to, keep growing and to keep playing and to keep working. And I've been, very fortunate to make a living out of something that I've loved from a young age, and something that's been a passion of mine for a long time.
Yeah, where did that initial passion come from, mate? Were you naturally tall at school and therefore you just end up playing basketball or volleyball or both because of your height, or was it something deeper than that?
Yeah, well, when I was younger, I played a range of sports. I played tennis, I did swimming, just all around. But my father is 6'7", and my mother also was a basketballer, as well as my father. Not at a high level, but, state league type level. And so they always loved the sport. And I guess it was sort of inevitable that I would get into it as I was, one of the taller guys in my class and for my age. And, once I got into it and a few of my mates started playing, I think when we were 7, I first picked up a ball, and then, from there I just sort of stuck with it. More of my friends played. I made more friends playing basketball, and, I kept growing, kept working, and, been fortunate enough to, stick with it.
Yeah, awesome, mate. And for those listeners who don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brock, but you're about 6'10", roughly. Is that?
Yeah, 208 centimetres, 6'10".
So that you've almost got a duck to go through the door at that sort of height, mate. So your parents obviously fed you a pretty good diet when you were a young mate, which is just awesome.
Yeah, that's it. Just anything and everything.
Now, tell me, sort of playing, and I guess you mentioned you sort of grew up in and around Brisbane. You must have been identified as someone with a bit of potential. And I know you actually were also very good at volleyball in those early days and had plenty of opportunity perhaps to go professional in that sport. How did that come about, and then what swung you back to pursue basketball as your preferred course?
Yeah, I guess, like you said, I was always tall, but I wasn't necessarily picked for all the representative teams, and a lot of the guys that I grew up with playing with all left for the AIS when we were 16. And I felt, I belonged with that group too. But, yeah, that year all the top guys in Queensland went down to the AIS and I missed out. So, that's when I really started to take it serious and, really thought, I really need to work at this if I want to go somewhere. And that was sort of a wake-up call. And I dedicated that whole year to just putting my head down and doing everything I could. My goal, was to get where those guys were and go down to the AIS. And, yeah, that year, I spread out my schooling. I did years 11 and 12 over 3 years instead of the traditional 2. So I'd have some spares throughout the day. And I would just take the City Cat or take the bus over to Auchenflower, which is a basketball stadium, during school time where I have the breaks. And I'd just go there for hours, and just work on my game just by myself or with another guy or with another coach. And, yeah, that year was pretty pivotal for me, especially as a junior. And so, yeah, I wasn't recognized like a lot of the other guys were with the names or things like that. And that was also a year where I'll take it back a couple of years when I missed out on another representative state team when we were younger. I took up volleyball. I was playing it at high school, and I thought, it's a bit of fun, and I'm tall and, pretty coordinated, so I was pretty good at it. And, yeah, I got up to representing the Australian team at a junior level, and then it came down to an AIS scholarship for volleyball or an AIS scholarship for basketball. And I'm happy that I chose basketball because that's always been my lifelong passion and a goal, but it was nice to know that volleyball was a second option if I wanted to continue sport at the high level if basketball didn't work out.
Yeah, well, interesting. So about the age of 16, your other mates all got a Guernsey down to the Australian Institute of Sport. You missed out. Why did you miss out? And you mentioned you worked very hard from there and were very determined to make sure you're going to join them. Why do you think you missed out, and what made the difference then in that, not only the hours that you put in, but what else do you think you did differently during that year that then got you to where you wanted to be?
Well, I think they'd represented Queensland. They'd been exposed to a lot of that stuff. I hadn't as much, although I felt like I belonged with them. But I hadn't been exposed, I guess, to in the same level or same amount as they had been. So that could have had something to do with it. But also, yeah, you never know. There's many things that could have gone differently. But I don't know. That year was just really pivotal for me. I guess if I had my time again, I wouldn't change it. That year in Brisbane, more or less alone, with not a lot of competition. It was just actually myself and my best mate, Brendan Tees. And we just worked, and, I had that drive to be better, and I wanted to be better than those guys. And I just, I'd watch video. That was the first year I got cable TV, so I started to watch the NBA, and, I wrote down and a few players that I really admired to watch, and I just envisioned myself being them and taking parts of their game. And, yeah, I set goals. That was the biggest thing. I wrote down next to my bed some goals, just on a pen and pad. And so every day when I woke up and every night when I went to sleep, I saw my goals were, what I was working towards, and that was sort of my drive for the whole year until I got there. And, yeah, once I finally got there, that was when the real work started. But, yeah, that year was very, very instrumental for me, I think.
Yeah, do you think the habits that you formed and the approaches that you adopted at that early age have been formative in moving forward? Because what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that you're almost mentally role modelling who you want to be by watching other players that you admired and picking up on techniques and things that they've done, and then practicing that on the court so that you're actually making it real. Is that an important part of the approach that you've now applied to your career as you've progressed?
Yeah, I would say half that and half was to do with goal setting. But like you said, how I wanted to watch those guys in the NBA and professional guys because, you know, when you're younger, those coaches, you know, they're volunteer coaches. They do their best they can, but they don't, you know, they're not necessarily high-level basketball coaches. They're just sort of there to, you know, fill in for their hobby and their passion, but they can't teach you how to get to the top level. They can teach you the basics, but the rest is sort of on you. And so I'd sort of watch those guys and I'd teach myself and see how it felt. And yeah, I also had a very great coach with a great vision and mentor of mine, Kieran Byrne, who, you know, not a lot of people believed in me, but he really believed in me and believed in the vision that I had. And I owe a lot of my success to him as to where I am today, because he's not just helped me on the basketball court, but, you know, in all areas of life. And he had the vision where a lot of other guys didn't, and he helped me achieve a lot of my goals.
Yeah, and you think Kieran was really instrumental in that, because the belief he had in you helped your own self-belief in relation to the direction you're having. How important was that in those early days, mate?
100%. You know, when a lot of, I guess, at the time, big coaches and things that as a young kid, you think, oh, you know, you're really impressionable. And if people don't think you're good, or if people don't, you know, it's easy to throw the towel in or easy to get excuses. But I was lucky I had Kieran in my corner who, you know, more or less said, look, what we're going to do is better than what you're going to get at the AIF. And, you know, he made me believe that, and I still believe that. And, yeah, the strides we made in that year and also in the years after that, yeah, I'm forever grateful for him and to him. And, yeah, I think having a mentor and someone like that, especially someone that believes in you, is huge, because sometimes you wake up and you don't necessarily believe in yourself on some days, but when you have someone that unconditionally believes in you, then, yeah, it's a big help.
Yeah, now, obviously he saw something in you to have that level of faith. What do you think that was?
Well, I think at the time, as 6'8", 6'9", unorthodox type left-handed basketball that not a lot of people know how to use, I guess. And I just needed a bit of like you said, self-belief to be able to do my thing, play my game, be different, not necessarily be a, you know, big back to the basket, traditional post or center or forward. But now you see in the modern game, there's a lot more versatility in the tall guys and a lot more big guys that shoot threes. And I sort of felt like I could do it all when I was younger, and yeah, I still feel like I can.
As we do.
Yeah.
I love that, mate. That's awesome. So you got down to the AIS. Where did the journey go from there?
Got down to the AIS, and the best probably piece of advice that I received before I left for the AIS from home was from my dad, who said, you know, you've done a lot of work to get here, but now is where the work really starts. Like, you haven't achieved anything just because you got to the AIS. Like, it's just a label. It's not like that's the end game. Now's when the work really starts. And so that's sort of, you know, because once I finally achieved my goal, it was sort of like, oh, I did it, you know?
Yeah.
But then, like Dad was saying, nah, you know, you did great, but now's where the work is really going to start. So I sort of felt like that was really important to hear, especially from him, because it's true. Once you get, like, you haven't made any money, you haven't made anything, you're down there on a sort of, whatever it was, a 1-year scholarship at the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I went down there with that mindset that, you know, these guys have been there for a year longer than me. I need to continue on my trajectory to, outwork them and be better than all of them. And that was a mindset I took. And yeah, I was down there for a year and a half before the under-19 World Championships. And then, some of the days were, looking back, I don't think I could have done what we did again, because, you'd wake up in the morning, go for shooting practice, 7 till 8 a.m., come back, get a quick brekkie, get on the bus to school, take a couple of classes at school, come back, have weights, have an individual session, maybe go back for lunch, go get changed. You got team practice in the evening. Then you got to go to recovery, cold tub, hot tub, get a quick dinner, and then go 7:30 till 9:30 at study hall, do 2 hours of homework, and then go to your room and, try and rest. But, you're a 17-year-old kid. You want to hang out with your mates. You want to, do things that regular teenagers do. And then, you got to get up and do it again the next day for 6 days a week. And it was pretty hectic, but yeah, definitely got you ready for professional life after.
A lot of discipline and routine and whatnot and structure in that exercise. Have you found that sort of level of routine and structures has been, again, important to your ongoing success?
Yeah, I think especially transitioning to college, because it was a similar routine there. And then I guess I'm happy that it was so hard at the AIS, I guess, in terms of practicing and learning how to manage your time, because after that it only got easier. So if you've had the hardest experience first, it's better, because then nothing seems comparable after that. So yeah, I'm happy that it happened at the front end of my career and not now, because I'd definitely be struggling.
Well, it's a bit like doing boot camp, isn't it? When you join the army, sort of break you down, then build you back up, and then you're pretty much ready to take on any challenge
100%.
from that point. Yeah, no, I love that. How important was the mental side? I mean, I know there's a lot of focus on the physical side and the repetitions of, the routines and everything that goes with it, but how much importance does what's between your ears play, do you think?
A lot, because, it's your first time away from home sort of living. You're talking about specifically the AIS, or you're talking about in sport in general?
Yeah, but both really, mate. So let's start with the IAS and then beyond that.
Yeah, the AIS, first time out of home, you got to deal with a lot of things by yourself. And so I think psychologically, you sort of, by default, you just learn how to cope. And then after that, like in life and in sport in general, I think I'd say 50%, maybe more, of the battle as a professional athlete is psychological.
Yeah.
Because, you can I've experienced the highs, the lows, and everything in between, I think, as an athlete, as a professional, especially basketballer. You have a good game, you'll feel on top of the world. You have a good couple games, you feel like there's no better feeling. But then you have one bad game, and you have a whole bunch of fans that are not happy with you, or you have a couple bad games, and you can be down in the dumps, and that can really affect, your next game, your next contract. And it's hard to dig yourself out sometimes, but, you have to have a balance. I think balance is the biggest key, not just to sport, but to life, because it helps equal out everything, put things in perspective, and it helps your overall performance. And with, psychology, balance is the biggest thing that I've found has helped.
And I mean, I see this in most areas, Brock, that, the enemy is within. It's the battle with your head that is often the biggest challenge. How have you learned to overcome those challenges? And it's all about belief and outlook, to be able to maneuver yourself through the inevitable highs and lows. Let's face it, none of us can be perfect all of the time. So you're going to have good games and you're going to have bad games, but it's how people respond to that makes the difference, and the choice they make as to, righto, where do we go from here? What's your thinking when you're going through those tough times and those patches where you're having some bad games? How do you lift yourself and then keep focused on the big prize?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just experience. Like, you can't really teach someone or fast track something. for someone unless they go through it.
Yeah.
And so I've been through it. I had terrible years, terrible games, great years and great games. And I think each time I'm better for it, whether it's a bad or a good experience, I'm better for it just because the accumulation of that helps me for the next time I'm facing that situation in a way where my first season as a professional was terrible. Terrible. I came out of, starring in college, leading scorer, everything. Now I'm in the professional world in a country that I don't speak the language. And by the end of the year, I was close to, saying, I've had enough of basketball because it was so mentally and psychologically draining. I didn't know if I could continue going, because it wasn't healthy. But I've got it to a fact now. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I'd love to drill in there because I'm assuming this is your first year in Italy when you're playing. I can't even pronounce it, but Granarola.
Bologna.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it probably felt that way, but putting in perspective from where I sit, you moved to a new country with a new culture, with a new language. You've gone from playing college football in the US, which is a very different style of game and a very different way of living than it is in Europe. You're playing against men who where pretty much every man's out for himself. They're wanting to protect their own longevity in the game. And you probably had a lot of expectations on yourself coming out of the US and doing very well to be thrown into that completely different mix where everything's new. At what point did you start to realise, well, hey, hold on, you had a bad year and then you started to pick up from there? Talk us about what you were thinking as you moved through that.
Well, I just come out of college where the last 2 years I'd averaged close to 20 points a game. And then going to, my whole thought was, I'm going to the NBA. So I didn't really pay much attention to the European basketball. And so when I ended up over there, to me, it was like, my job is to score 20 a game like I have. This is why they're paying me. What I thought was so much money, but looking back was nothing, especially compared to some of the other guys on my team, was nothing. But, this is the first money I'd ever made. So I'm thinking, I'm an import. I'm getting all this money. I need to do what they're paying me to do. I need to score 20 a game. But now, being over here for 8 years, I don't think there's one guy that scores over 20 a game, Yeah. Like the way the European style of basketball is just completely different. Whereas if you score double figures, like if you score 10 points a game, that's the equivalent to like 20 points a game anywhere else, I think. Yeah. If you're scoring 10 points, and I think that year I averaged 7 or 8, but I was comparing myself to 20 a game, so I thought, this is terrible. And each game would just be worse and worse in my head. I'd have a good game and the next game would be bad, and I'd think, oh my God, like it would just like snowball. And then by the end I was just exhausted. And it wasn't great, but it was a huge learning experience for me, and I'm grateful for the experience for sure.
Yeah, well, again, it sounds to me like the enemy was between the ears in terms of your own expectations of yourself. Would have been a really grueling year from a whole bunch of aspects, I would have thought. You then came and spent some time with our favourite Adelaide 36ers to tell us about, and just what sort of weaving back from there, because and correct me if I'm wrong here, but most professional basketballers all want to play NBA. That's sort of seen as the holy grail. You chose to go to Italy for that period. Talk us through, because there must have been in your mind or discussions around that time about where you fit into the NBA potentially. Can you talk us through what was happening in that regard?
Yeah, so after I finished my first season in Italy, I talked to my agent and I said, look, please give me one more shot at the NBA. Like, I know I had a bad year here, but it's not, a true reflection of me. I know that I can play there, and just try and get me a shot. So he got me a free agent camp. I think 70 odd people go to this free agent camp in Utah. And it was for a spot to get on their summer league roster. and there were 70 guys there, and they were going to take, I don't know, 2 or 3 spots for this summer league roster. And I thought, I'm gonna go because I got nothing to lose. So I went to the States. I stayed on one of my old college teammates' couches who lived in Seattle. I stayed there, worked out there, just borrowed one of his old cars, and I just worked out for that whole summer. Went to this free agent camp, and I felt I did really well. And so, yeah, I waited. A few weeks went by, and then my agent said, yeah, they want you for summer league, so, get ready, go for another training camp, and then they want you for the pre-summer league training camp, and then hopefully you can go to summer league with them. So I went there, played well again, got onto the summer league roster. It was the year Dante Exum had got drafted, so it was pretty cool to have another Australian there. And yeah, we played summer league together, and I did really well. I played against Giannis when he was his first year at the Bucks or second year at the Bucks, and yeah, I really held my own and had some pretty big games at the Las Vegas Summer League. And I made the training camp roster, which I think is 25 guys. They bring in a training camp, and they take 12 or 14 for the roster for that season.
Yeah.
And I had another pretty solid training camp with them. I got down to the last cut. It was the day before the season had tipped off, and the coach called me up to his office, or the GM called me up to his office. I was the only one in the locker room, and I thought, okay, I didn't have a great feeling.
Okay.
I thought they're either gonna, let me know I've made the roster or that I've been cut, Mm-hmm. And it's the day before, I'm getting all these messages, oh, you've made the 15, congratulations. And then I didn't believe it. I thought, let's wait till I, play a real game. I played the preseason, but I didn't play a real game yet. Anyway, so I went up to the GM's office, and it was sort of like a somber mood. And I thought, here we go, And then he's like, Brock, unfortunately, we have to let you go. It's been great having you, blah, blah, but we don't have room for you this year, hopefully, in the future. So I thought, all right, that's all good. I've made it this far. I want to get back. So I thought, I'll ask him, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm on the team next year? And he just said, well, the outside shooting is something that you really need to work on. But other than that, you're everything we need. We're just the way our roster's set up at the moment, we can't fit you in. I thought, okay, no problem. So in my head, get my outside shooting to be where it needs to be, and then I'll be back. Yeah. I went down to the locker room to pack up my stuff, and the head coach stopped by, and he said, Brock, look, we've tried to trade a few guys to keep you on this roster, but we weren't able to. So when the trade or when free agency or after the All-Star break, when we can get rid of these guys and sign you, we want to do that. So go somewhere where we can bring you back in middle of February. And I thought, okay, so my options are the D-League, which, they can bring you up whenever, where you get paid, I don't know, $30,000 before tax.
Yeah.
What it was back then.
Yeah.
Or go to Australia because the season finished in February. Because the European seasons finish in June, and there's no way, I could go back in February because you're locked into contract.
Yeah.
So the best option for me was to go back to Australia, where I thought, I've got a bit of a name. I'll have a good role. I had a good relationship with Joey. My best friend, Brendan Tees, played for the 36ers at the time. So he sort of convinced me that would be a good spot for me. And also Daniel Johnson, 36ers legend, was chose that year to go overseas. So I sort of went in to fill his vacancy while he was gone. And yeah, it all sort of worked out perfectly for me to go down and fit in with Adelaide.
Yeah,
so that's the rest of the season.
I know you had some challenges there towards the end of that season. Unknowingly, you tell us a story. I think you fractured your leg and kept playing on. Talk to us a little bit about that, because it takes a fair bit of courage to be playing on when you're carrying that sort of an injury.
Yeah, so everything went to plan that year. It was a bit up and down, but I had a great season, and we had a great season in the end in Adelaide. I played really well, and all was set for me to go back over to the States and sign with the Jazz for the rest of the season. But the second last game of the regular season with Adelaide, I think it was against Perth. The last minute of the game, I just had a little knock on my leg. And, I just felt a pain that I'd never felt before. And, sure enough, I went and got an X-ray. And the doctors at the time said, nothing's wrong, just a bump. So I thought, okay, it doesn't feel like a bump. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't put any pressure on it. And so I thought, all right, then I'll just try tape it up or rub some, deep heat on it, and she'll be right for the semi-finals. So I lathered it with deep heat, tried all these different types of tape to tape my leg to make the pain go away. Anyway, played the 2 semi-final games, could barely move, And then after that, the season was over because we lost 2 games to New Zealand. It was a bad feeling, but, my leg was so much pain. But anyway, the season was over. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go get MRI on my own just to see, because there's no way it's nothing. Anyway, sure enough, get the MRI. They say, yeah, you've got a fractured, I think it was tibia, the outside bone on my right leg. And I said, okay, cool. So what's the rehab? Surely I'll be good. I'll be back in, a week or 2. They said, yeah, you'll be out 8 to 10 weeks. You have to have, no pressure on it. You have to just sort of have your leg up. And, you can't walk, jog or run for at least 8 weeks. And we'll get another CT scan after 8. And then we'll, assess you from there. And I thought, yeah, well, I'll be right. I've played in 2 games. I'll be good. Anyway, that same afternoon, my agent called me. Hey, Brock, what's your address? The Jazz are going to FedEx over your contract for the rest of the season. And my heart just sank. I just got this news that I'm out for 10 weeks, and then they want me over there next week. And, my lifelong goal was to go over there, play, It's still crazy to think about. I still remember where I was, the feeling that I had in my heart when I got that phone call saying I was out for that long. And I still have the FedEx envelope in my bedroom at my parents' house right now with inside, rest of the season contract with the Jazz. But anyway, wasn't meant to be. And I'm very grateful for the steps that I was able to make after that and not going to the NBA, because I was fortunate enough to play in Lithuania where I had a tremendous experience, met my wife, and looking back, it would be amazing to play in the NBA, but how much I've gained off the court in being my wife and having my son now, I can't see it happening the other way.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, isn't it? I mean, it would have been absolutely gutting at the time, and it feels, when those sort of things occur, it's like, that's it, my dream's gone. But the gateway that it's opened to the life that you've now lived and played and lived in some fantastic parts of the world and continue to do so, you just couldn't put a value on what that's done for you, both personally and professionally. Mate, a lot of the listeners are probably aware you were fortunate enough to be part of the Olympics in Rio. Talk to us about that, because, I mean, there's not many people who are able to say they played in the Olympics. It must have been a fantastic experience, both on and off the court. Talk us a little bit about it, because I know that the result was pretty disappointing given how close you got to picking up a bronze medal. But would love for you to share that story with us.
Yeah, well, obviously going to the Olympics, I think no matter who you are as a kid, especially in our generation growing up, on all the Weet-Bix boxes, on all the TV, there was swimming, Kathy Freeman, Ian Thorpe, all this, Olympians were like the holy grail of, Australian idols, looking up to, like kid idols. Everyone wanted to be an Olympian. Didn't matter which sport, playing PE, whatever in school, you wanted to be an Olympian. And so all those emotions and all those things all came to one when you're announced it. You go into the Olympics and going to represent your country at the highest level in the sport that you love and everything that goes with that. It was a tremendous honor to play with some of the guys that were on that team and to be able to contribute at a high level. And, when your number's called, to be able to do your job. And, it was a huge honor and something that, I'll forever hold dear to myself and be able to tell my kids and kids and kids and anyone that'll listen basically that I went to the Olympics and it was amazing.
Well, I guess it's not it's probably well within your reach potentially to be playing the Olympics next year. Is that still one of your aspirations at this stage?
Yeah, for sure. I think one more Olympics would be great. I'd never say no to playing for the national team, and I would definitely love to represent my country again at the Olympics. It's definitely a goal of mine, and I'll keep working, and hopefully I'll get there. Yeah,
tell me, as you reflect on your career so far, you've shared some of the moments with us. I'd love you to share some of the high points and probably some of the most interesting experiences that you've had on that journey. If you can take us through what was happening with who and what you were feeling on the road that is a roller coaster for professional sportsmen.
Some of the high points, I think, winning championships and winning cups, and they're obviously great feelings. When you work all year and you're at the end of the year, you're on a successful team and you get to hold up that trophy, and you have the night after that and in the locker room after the game where you finish your season and there's beer, cigars, everything going around the locker room. It's a great feeling, just the end of the season, you sort of let the steam off and you finish the season as a winner. I think some of the highlights is when you win like cups or championships and you get a bonus. Yeah. Or if you win a big game and you get a bonus, like that's, I think, a lot of people say, you should be in it to, for the jersey, for the pride, for this. Listen, the motivation when you have a bonus to win a game, like a monetary bonus, is crazy. How you feel when, every basket, every time someone scores, every time you get a stop, like, you shouldn't say it because, you're getting paid a contract and you're getting paid a wage and everything, but those bonuses, I don't know, I'm not just speaking for myself, but other guys I've spoken to on my team, like, when you have a bonus, that motivation somehow gets doubled. So it's pretty cool. Like some of the bonuses that you get from winning those games is great feeling. Interesting stories. I think just like NBA guys everywhere, but over here it's not so common. But to charter flights, like after a game, you just go straight to the airport, get on the plane, fly back. Before the game, day before, you just go to the airport, straight to the jet. Those feelings are pretty, I guess as a regular person, it's not something you think about ever being, on a chartered plane, but it's pretty cool to fly private around Europe and to be on some big clubs and to be recognized, like in a city as big as Istanbul where there's 20 million people, the population of Australia just here in the city. Like I walk around Brisbane or walk around anywhere in Australia and I get recognized, I guess, as a tall guy, but not as, a basketballer or anything. No, but over here, Brock Motum, you want to take picture, you want to do this? And I think, how is it possible that I'm recognized in a city over here with this many people? But it happens every day, and it's definitely humbling. And I don't know if it's just because I play for a big club here or because I'm just a 6'10" white guy, blonde hair, green eyes. It looks a lot different to everybody else, but I definitely get recognized over here, which is pretty cool. And it's a nice feeling.
Yeah, I mean it's a real rock star sort of status, and
it's different. It's different.
Well, and why shouldn't you enjoy it, mate? My feeling is you've worked damn hard. You've dedicated your life to making this happen. You put endless hours and years of blood, sweat and tears into it. And, coming back to your point you made around the bonuses, your life in sport is short. If you look at, the average 85-year lifespan and you've got, if you're doing extremely well, you've got 10 years in the game at the highest level. That's if you're doing really well. So why wouldn't you be enjoying the rewards and that monetary motivation? Yes, it's not the pure driver, but you've got a very limited time in the sunshine. And if you don't take advantage of that, then life can fall off the cliff afterwards. To actually enjoy and be motivated by that incentive, I think is very fair and reasonable, mate. So it's good that you feel that way. What about the flip side? Some of the low points and the biggest challenges that you've had along the way.
Biggest challenges, I guess. Like I said, with the being recognised, it's all good when you're playing well, but when you're being recognised and you're not playing well or your team is losing, the flip side, people are looking at you and you're thinking, damn, what are they saying in their language? They're talking some kind of BS about me, and they're just looking at me smiling like, this dude sucks. He played terrible. But all those things go along with it. But also, with the age of social media and how accessible we are as athletes, some of the messages I've got from fans or people of other teams or things like that, and some of the ways they speak, I don't know whether it's their broken English or if their native language they can say these expressions, but they're horrible. And I've grown to accept it, and whatever, like they can say what they want because we're getting paid a lot of money to do what we do, so that goes along with the territory, I guess. But yeah, some of those things initially, they're a bit hard to deal with. You think, damn, like, am I that bad? Like, all these guys are saying these things. Is this really like that? And sometimes you get caught up on it, but now I just sort of laugh it off and show my wife or show some of my friends, oh, look what this guy just said. Oh, I haven't heard this one. Or, sometimes that mounts up. But yeah, for the most part, that was a little bit challenging, but that goes with it. Some other challenging things, just bad games, I guess. Bad games, they sort of, because it's a bit different to anywhere else, I guess, in the world. Your contracts, it's for a year, or if you sign for 2 years, it's for 2 years, but really you're on a month-by-month contract or a game. No, I'd say month-by-month. Like, if you don't have a good month, the team's on the phone looking for a replacement for you, like a week earlier.
Yeah.
They're looking for someone, like they're having someone back up. Because it's a business, I understand that. But also, you have a couple bad games or your team's not winning. The team, they have to make a change. And so they can just negotiate. No matter what your contract says, you're not going to get all of it. They can say, look, we'll give you another two months of your deal and you can go find someone else to supplement it, or we'll try and negotiate a buyout or something like that. So I've sort of had that mentality where I'm on a week-by-week or month-by-month contract every year. It doesn't matter how much I've signed for, where I've signed, or for how long I've signed. I know it's month-by-month, and I can never take my foot off the gas. Practice, games, nothing. I think with, guys, it's hard to say, but guys that are injured all the time, guys that don't play well, or my dad, he worked for 20 years at this company, AGC in Brisbane. Yep. And he said, in 20 years, I think it was 2 days or 3 days he took off work. And so I've had that mentality, like, you can't just take days off, especially, injuries and things like that are, out of your control. But if you're just not feeling it, or there's no excuse. And I think that's really helped me, longevity wise, in the terms where I just have that mentality where every day I have to wake up and go to work, because nothing's guaranteed and I need to make the most of everything to ensure that I can stay here and stay playing each year and keep my reputation and my name high in the business.
Yeah, I love it. That's virtually the self-pressure you're putting on yourself, because that's a high pressure, a high performance environment that you're in, and there's not too much compensation for errors for too long, because there's too many other players that want to take your spot. So I don't think a lot of people appreciate just how much pressure that is, psychologically, physically, and emotionally, in every respect. So that would certainly build some resilience over time. Tell me, mate. Every professional that I talk to has winning rituals and habits and superstitions that they bring along with them that help them mentally perform. Can you share some of yours?
Yeah, I think I used to be really bad at this. I used to, have OCD about it, to the fact where I'd, go a bit crazy if I didn't do exactly what I'd done in the past. But now it's sort of more or less just, I try and, if I have a good game or if I've been playing well, I try and replicate that same sort of game day, routine or structure that I've done in the past, just in a way that I don't have to use so much brain power in making more decisions. I can just sort of be in autopilot until the game starts, and I know, I'm comfortable with how my preparation's been because I've had success with that preparation in the past. And so I just sort of try and stick to a similar routine each week, just so it limits the amount of decisions I have to make and margin for error where something could potentially go wrong. And I can just use all my focus and, I guess, brain power getting ready for the game.
Yeah, love that. Talk us through the game day routine, if you don't mind, because it'd be really good to understand what you're thinking, what you're doing, that sort of gets you to the onto the court in your best possible outlook.
Yeah, so if we have an earlier game, like a 3 or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock game, usually we won't have shoot around. So if we're at home, I'll sort of wake up. My wife will let me sleep in. She'll go sleep with the baby in the other room or take him out so he doesn't wake me up. I'm very thankful for that. But, I get to sleep in a little bit, wake up, have some breakfast, maybe hang out for a little bit, get some lunch probably 2 hours before I want to leave. And then the key thing, like what I've had in the past is, you stay in bed all day, wake up, go to the game, you're fresh. But I try and wake up, get a little bit of fresh air, whether it's just go for a walk outside for 20 seconds or stick my head out the window just to get some fresh air. Because I feel like being inside the house or inside an apartment or hotel room, it's sort of, I don't know, when you go out and you're straight into the court, you still feel a bit sleepy. So I try and either stick my head out the window or go for a quick 30-second, 2-minute walk outside just to wake up a little bit, and then after lunch have a quick power nap, and then get up, take a shower, go to the game 2 hours early, have the meeting, go for shoot around, and then I'm away.
Yeah, okay. Are there specific things around the clothes you wear, the shoes you wear, the music that you play? Are there any of those sorts of things that sort of creep into that sort of get ready ritual?
Yeah, for sure. I try and wear similar shoes to the game. I usually have a bit of a playlist that I play on the way to the arena. After I take my pre-game nap, I always shave before the game. And then, since I'd say 2010, I've worn Kobe basketball shoes in more or less every game since then. And I try and always, even though he's passed away now, and rest in peace to him, and that's made his shoe price skyrocket. I still try and get as many as I can because that's just one of the non-negotiables for me. They're a great shoe, super comfortable, and I've always tried to, always play in those every game.
Yeah, I love that, mate. Love that. Mate, if you were to sum up for us what separates a great professional basketballer from a good professional basketballer, what would it be in your eyes?
I think just work ethic. You see a lot of guys that end up being the best, not because they're naturally gifted or, that gets you to a certain way, but the guys that have a work ethic and are consistent at doing what they do, I think they're usually the best professionals. They know what they want to do. They know what they have to do. and they sort of prioritize that. Some guys I've played with or I've seen, they sort of prioritize different things like going out to the bars, going out late at night, going to the malls and, spending all their money and doing these things, which is okay because, that's part of being a professional, being an adult and having the balance. But I think like in life with money, you got to pay yourself first. And I think guys that put basketball first and worry about the other things later, they're the best. They're the best pros and have the best careers.
Yeah, love that. I know you. I think you got to play alongside Klay Thompson for a period, and I understand he's sort of, given where he's gone to, would he be one of your role models? Do you think? And also, what is it about Klay that you think separates him from a lot of the other players in the game?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to play with him in college and be his roommate. And I learned a lot from him, I think unknowingly to him, but just knowing that he has the big name, knowing that he was going to be, NBA player with his dad, being a former number one pick and everything. I sort of, hung around him and tried to spend as much time as I could around him to learn, what separates him. Because, he's 6'6", 6'7", like not overly tall, not at the time, wasn't like too much. I was trying to think like what makes him different than these other guys. But it was just, his self-belief and also his work ethic. Like it'd be 9, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. And I'd hear the ball bouncing and then he'd come knock on my door and say, "Hey, you want to go shoot?" I know, I'm getting ready for bed, I got to go class in the morning. And then I thought, you know what? I'll go shoot. Hell, what else am I going to do, So I'd go with him and he'd go down one end and I'd go down the other and he'd just put the music on. And I thought, go shoot, we'll just go get a couple shots up, pass to each other, joke around, whatever. No, this dude was full sprinting, pull-ups, like all kind of moves you could imagine, like at pace, game speed, everything. I was like, damn, like I didn't know this is what this is what you meant by coming to shoot at 11 p.m. And he was, whether we had a game the next day, whether we just had a game. And yeah, I think that sort of made me realize, okay, he's going to be pretty special. And I can see why he's head and shoulders above everybody else because he puts this much extra time in away from practice. And that's sort of, he is definitely a role model for mine and it opened my eyes to how much extra you need to do to be better than everybody else.
Yeah, I love it. Great privilege to be able to play alongside guys like that. Mate, I know you relatively recently married to your lovely wife, Martina, and only very recently had your son, Maverick. What impact has your relationship with Martina and now having a bouncing baby boy impacted on your outlook on life, on your goals and your aspirations?
Well, I don't know where to start. I think the best thing about it all is just the work-life balance. Before I met her and before we had Mav, it was sort of all, me in my own head, basketball, like everything was amplified. Good games, top of the world. Bad games, damn, will I get cut? Where will I have to work? How will I get money? But now, come home, and food's cooked, or, got to smile, got to hug, got, this, let's do this. Oh, do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go to the shops? Do you want to go, it sort of distracts you from just being so focused on your job and getting so caught up in your own head. It just helps general well-being, I think, having the balance, because for me, balance is so important. And then when Mav came, our son, it changed even more, I think, for the better. In terms of my basketball, that's my job and that's who I am when I'm there. But then when I'm home, it doesn't matter what's happened. Whether I practice at game, at what someone said, what anyone thinks of me. No. I walk in and this little dude is smiling at me or laughing, or he couldn't care about anything that's going on except that Daddy's walking through the door.
Yeah.
And even just talking about the smile on my face is, it's there's nothing, no better title, Olympian, championship winner, any title I've ever had. Nothing's been better than being a dad or being labelled or having the title of a dad. That's for sure.
Yeah, no question. I know that feeling only too well, mate. Let's start projecting into the future a little bit, if we can, and paint us a picture of what your absolute ideal lifestyle looks like. You might be living it right now, or maybe you're not, or maybe there's things in your head that you're working towards. Just paint us a picture of what that looks like for me.
I guess the biggest thing I'm working towards is financial freedom, in a way that I don't have to depend on someone else to dictate how I live my life, and have to, I guess, rely on someone to give me a paycheck, or I guess what I want to do right now and the sacrifices I'm making living overseas and playing this high level basketball, high pressure, high stress environment, is to be able to reward myself and my family on the back end in a way that we, we'll still be able to still have to work and things like that if we choose to, but be able to want to do those things and not have to, I guess, and have the sort of freedom to do what we want, when we want, and how we want, and not have people dictate to us, on their own terms. I don't really know if I'm wording it the right way, or coming across the right way, but just that's what I'm working towards, and that's the life that I have a goal to achieve.
I love it, because what you've just described is exactly what my wife and I's goals were, and that's exactly the life that we now live. And I can't tell you that the peace of mind that comes from knowing that you don't need to worry about money, and that the freedom that gives you in terms of we still work, and there are times when I work very hard, but I'm doing it because I want to, not because I have to. There's a massive difference in that. And the choices and the freedom that gives you in terms of what you do and where you do it and when you do it, I can't put a value on it. So I love your vision around that. What are you investing in that's going to help you get there? Or what do you intend to invest in as well? It's probably both, really.
Yeah, well, at the moment I'm investing, a lot of equities, stocks, some commercial property holdings, but yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm investing right now is just my time in learning about how to best do that and how to best achieve it. Just by reading some books, following certain people on Twitter, and reading articles about how I want to go about investing my money as it comes. And that's the biggest thing right now, is just the investment of time to better my knowledge, so I can have the best way and the best returns in the future.
Yeah, I love that. Does property play any part in your thinking around that moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. I have a big passion for property. I spend probably, a couple hours a week, I would say, on the realestate.com.au or domain apps, just by browsing through properties or reading the different articles that are on their sites, because it's, they say the great Australian dream. It's have a big house, big backyard, and all those things that go with it. So I think property is definitely something that I want to be involved in the future. I just, right place, right time, and right strategy for me.
Yeah.
And so right now, like I said, I'm just spending a bit of my time in gaining as much knowledge as I can. So when I do decide to pull the trigger on some properties, I know the best way to do it.
Yeah, love it. And knowledge is absolutely the key. So I'm picturing here, if you're looking on realestate.com, that the longer term plan is to end up back in Oz with the family. Is that the goals at this stage?
Yep. Yeah, that's the plan. We try and come back each off season over here, and spend a bit of time there. In the last couple of years, we've just Airbnb'd in a couple of different suburbs that we like around Brisbane. And we're just sort of trying to get a feel and a vibe of the area and see if we could picture ourselves living there and what the pros and cons of each neighborhood are and things like that. Because, there's one thing to drive by or go there once a week or once a year for a coffee or cafe or restaurant. There's another thing to live there. And, I think there's no better way than just to get a feel for the place than by spending a month or so in each suburb, so then when you decide to pull the trigger and buy, you know what you get into.
Love that, mate. Absolutely. Absolute gold, and that if the listeners are focusing in on that, that's just a brilliant way to do it. My wife and I, our longer term plan is we've got our investments all here in Australia, but I want to follow the weather and live in 3 or 4 different locations around the globe that rotate on sort of every 3 or 4 months. And we've been doing what you're doing, and we spent some time in Mendoza, in Argentina, for a period because wine region, they have the World Hockey Championships there, so that satisfies my need in that regard.
Nice.
It's a good climate and it's a very cheap lifestyle, so you can sort of produce your investments here and live like kings very effectively in other parts of the globe. And try before you buy is definitely the way to go. Like you say, driving past doesn't really tell you anything, but if you're actually living in the place for a period, you really get a flavour for how it goes. So that's you've got some smart thinking there, mate. Mate, I'd love to sort of dig now into the investment subject a little bit and start off by getting you to talk about your beliefs in money. What's your relationship with money? What were you brought up to believe about money, and how is that impacting on where you've got to and where you're going to take that?
Yeah, I think my relationship with money has sort of been taught to me from a younger age. I think my dad's always had a pretty good hold on his financials and the probably indirect lessons he'd passed on to me. In a way that, he'd always talk about super. He'd always talk about, investing in shares and, telling me about salary sacrifice and how, short term it's not ideal, but the tax effectiveness and the way you can load it up on the back end is a really good strategy, and how it'll pay off, when the time comes. And so just, I guess, introducing me to those things and having those conversations, even when I was younger and probably didn't really understand what he was talking about, but I had those words and those stories in my head. And then so when I did come to understand, it all made sense. And so when it was time to, I guess, implement what he'd said, I'd already had that advice from a younger age. And so I was a bit more financially educated than, I guess, people that don't have those discussions or don't really know the benefits and understandings of how money works.
Yeah, really important grounding there. Given your immersion in professional sport for quite some time now, how much awareness about the importance of building wealth and financial being to setting themselves up after life, after sport, do you think the awareness is?
Honestly, I don't think there's enough. I think a lot of guys, especially over here in the bigger teams, they have, their agents, and when they sign with the agent, they get, the whole package. It comes with a financial advisor, this, that, and that. And they don't really know where their money is being invested. And I think, okay, they're still ahead of the game and they have someone, managing their money and investing for them. But I think the intricacies of that in understanding, 1, where your money is being invested, and 2, how much you're paying that person to invest your money. Like, if you're paying 1.5%, 2%, and then they're getting kickbacks from these funds. Yeah. They got managed funds that they're, there's a lot of money that's getting siphoned away that they think, making, 10, 20, 30, couple $100,000 a year on investments. So, don't worry about this much. But over time, each year those fees and the money that's going away unbeknown to them, definitely adds up. Or it could be years on your retirement right there. So totally. I think those things aren't aren't explained to guys enough, and probably for the betterment of financial advisors, because otherwise they wouldn't be making as much money as they do.
Yeah.
But I think from the athlete point of view, there definitely needs to be more education. And not just that, but they need to understand how your money is invested, why you're paying what you're paying. And, it just takes a little bit of research and a few questions to ask, and it'll save you a lot of money, a lot of time. And not just that, but I think day-to-day things like credit cards and even, living over here, foreign exchange rates, just being in tune with how the dollar is and how, those little things, they're 5% each transaction, or that really adds up over time. And I think little things like that can definitely open your eyes to the world of money. And if you understand money and how it works, you can definitely save a lot more just by little tips and tricks like that. Can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run.
Spot on. It's so good to hear you say that, mate, because a lot of people don't even understand that. In general life, most people don't understand that, the importance of just those small percentage fees and the impact on the end result. They can be absolutely massive, and it's what some of them are getting paid behind the scenes that's also chipping away at your nest egg. Mate, what stage of your career did you start thinking about investing?
I'd say after my first season, when I finally got a bit of money after my first season in Italy, I thought, like everyone, property. I'm watching all these things on the internet. I watch, property is what everybody thinks. You think, stocks are, for rich people and for people, high risk, high this. So, I'd go around with my parents on the weekends and we'd go look at apartments and things like that in the city and around some nice areas that I liked. And we just look at, I'd say, this is what this is worth. Oh, okay. This is what I'd pay for it. This is how you get a home loan. So I learned all those things. But then the more I looked into it, it wasn't beneficial for me to do that. And in terms, paying cash for a place or getting a home loan, and then, you have to pay interest. And I'm thinking, why would I pay all this interest if I have cash for a place right now? And, now I understand why you get home loans and why you do all those things. But at that time, I just thought, cool area, close to the city, apartment. And, now I understand, you have to see the demand, what's going to be built in the future, all those things play a part in investments. And I just thought, cool place. If I can rent it out, great. If not, I'll just live here, bachelor lifestyle mentality. If money's not a thing, if I don't rent it out, I'll just live in it. All the costs and the body corporate and power and electricity, all those things, when you do the numbers, it didn't make sense. But that was when I first started thinking about investing. And then after that, I did my research on, financial planners and financial advisors, and I narrowed down what I wanted in a financial advisor. And I sort of took a few meetings with different companies and even some banks, and I learned what I did like and what was definitely a no-go, and I ended up finding exactly what I wanted, and now I'm with a company that I'm happy with.
Yeah, Brent, I'd love your tenacity and really what I'm hearing is just someone who's not scared to ask questions. And a lot of people have a fear of, if they ask a question, they make themselves look stupid. But I've always believed that the only dumb question is the question you don't ask. And if you don't get a good answer, you keep asking until you do. And what I'm hearing with you is you're doing the research. And I mean, you would have been fairly, in regard to what you were doing that early in your career, you would have been pretty lonely. I'm imagining a lot of the other players are looking at you going, what are you wasting your time with this for? Let's just go and play ball.
Yeah, well, that was sort of in my off seasons when I was back in Australia. Like I wouldn't necessarily do those things. I'd research and things when I'm overseas, but when I was back in Australia, I was like, okay, it's business time. This is where I wanted to end up, and this is where my money is held. So this is where I want my investments to be. And so it was just the sort of time when I was at home, at work or during the day, and I've just got 2 or 3 hours when I'm working out during the day, and the rest of the time I'm like, okay, I gotta start taking strides outside of basketball and in the business side. So that's where I'd set those meetings and meet with people there.
I love that, mate. Mate, what advice would you give to current players that, particularly early in their career, about investing?
I'd say, first of all, to educate yourself, and second of all, to go for it, because it's not about timing, of markets, whether it's real estate or stocks. It's like time in the market. So that's probably a bit of a cliche quote, but the longer you're in the market and the earlier you can get started. I wish I had got started, I wish I had educated myself earlier and gotten started a couple of years earlier. But, now if you can get started in your mid-20s, even early 30s, it'll be a huge difference when it comes down to when you need that money and when you want to rely on that and whatever your strategy is and your goals. The longer that you're in the markets, the better off your returns are going to be in the long run.
Mate, I'm very impressed with your level of knowledge, because I often say to people that, the biggest impact on the end result is time. And the longer you're in it, the easier it gets and the bigger the opportunity. So if you're playing that long game, and you're treating it like a team, and you're surrounding yourself with professionals that are really good at what they do, but you understand what they do and how they do it, and they're playing to your game strategy, then on and off the court, you're really setting yourself up to enjoy life long term. Mate, are there any sort of key lessons that you'd pass on to other athletes and people in general in that regard?
I would say the biggest thing I've taken just from my readings and from, I guess, experience is that we have a lot of expenses in, day-to-day living and life. But I would say when you get your check each month, or when you get your payments, whatever it is, fortnightly or monthly, set aside amount for yourself first. Like, pay yourself first. And then, so say you're getting paid, I don't know, for example, what is it, $10,000 a month. Set aside X amount, whatever it is, 2,000, 5,000, whatever you can do at the beginning of that. And then, pay your bills and things that you need after that. And then whatever's left, okay, that can be your spending money or whatever it is. But have a budget, so it's not that when your check comes in, you pay all your bills, whatever, and then whatever's left, that's what I'll save, or that's what I'll invest. I think you can always find ways to spend money, and there's always something that you can, that you can buy or spend your money on. But if you pay yourself first and set that aside, that's money you can't touch, and that's money that's been invested already, and then you make do with the rest. So I think paying yourself first is a big thing, and that's something that I've learned helps a lot. It obviously, helps with the larger wage you get, but I think it's applicable to any size paycheck, because you live within your means and you stay in your own lane, but paying yourself first is a great way to get ahead.
Yeah, it's just such a simple lesson that you can start early, and that if that becomes a habit, because I always said it's not how much you earn, it's how much you spend that counts.
Yeah.
And the gap is the piece that's really going to make or break what your future looks like. So, good words of wisdom there, mate. Mate, loved your sharing. I can tell that the diligence that you put towards the sport is the same diligence that you put towards anything you're doing in your life, and that just a little bit of wisdom that you've shared with us around your approach to investment and money tells me that you've done a lot of thinking, a lot of reading around it, mate. So that's fantastic. Well done, mate. I want to switch now into what I affectionately refer to as the ambush round, where I just ask 5 quick questions that the listeners always want to glean your words of wisdom on. And first one of those, mate, is what's your favourite quote and why?
Favourite quote would be that hard work pays off. I think the reason for that is whenever I've been in a rut or wherever I've, not been in an ideal situation, I just sort of put in a bit of extra time, an extra session or an extra hour here or there, and put your head down, and more often than not, you work your way out of it, and you don't even know that you're in in the bad times, and it comes back to a good time, and it just comes down to hard work. And there's no substitution for it. There's, you can have lucky charms, this, that, but at the end of the day, hard work is going to get the job done.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Mate, switching to the book arena, what's the top book that you'd recommend people read and why?
I would say Rich Dad, Poor Dad is probably my favorite, and someone that I would recommend to anyone, any level, or anyone, any stage of their financial journey, or just because of the way it's written and easiness, I guess, and the level of understanding. It's not a whole bunch of high-level jargon. It's just simple life messages about money and how to make it work for you.
100% agree, mate. I think most people have had what I call a Kiyosaki moment. I certainly had mine back in the 90s at a pivotal time in my life, and it completely flipped my head in relation to my outlook from there. And I call it my passive-aggressive moment. From that moment on, I've become very aggressive about creating passive income. And everything I've done since then has been driven around the simple philosophies that I drew from Robert Kiyosaki. So it's a real Bible read for anyone who's interested in setting themselves up financially, mate. So that is a cracker. Mate, on a similar but allied subject, most Aussies feel like they pay too much tax. What's the top legal thing that you've done to minimise the tax that you pay?
I would say get a great accountant.
Yeah.
I think if you get a good accountant, they can help you in ways that, that's their expertise. Every day they're dealing with Australian taxes and the laws, and they know how to best put you in a position where you're paying your taxes and everything is above board, but they can also help you take advantage of things that you may not have necessarily thought of.
Yeah, spot on, mate. Absolutely spot on. Mate, back on the investment subject for a moment, what's both the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received so far?
I think the worst piece of investment advice I'd ever gotten was that you should borrow money to invest in stocks and things like that. I think that at the time it was looking back, it was a good piece because stocks went way up since then, but I think it's just too risky. Whether you go out of your depth to borrow money, you're paying interest to the bank, and then you got to hope that the returns are going to be plus the interest that you're paying, plus the fees that you're paying the financial advisor, and then your returns. I think there's just too much risk in that. Borrowing money to invest in stocks. And I think the best piece of advice I got was not to check your portfolio holdings every day because they're going to fluctuate up and down. And some days you'll lose a lot of money and some days you'll make a lot. And yeah, you should check, monthly or every now and then and not be so caught up on the day-to-day swings of it all.
100% agree, mate. I often say that, if you've got a 15-year investment strategy, why would you be making decisions in year 1, 2 based on what you've seen in the headlines on the news? You just don't do it.
Exactly.
And a lot of people, unfortunately, allow their emotions to get in the road of that, and they listen to the noise and they make knee-jerk decisions that can be extremely costly. So, love your thinking around that, mate. Absolutely love your thinking around that. Mate, coming back to habits, what's a happy habit or a rewarding ritual that you adopt that you believe has contributed most to your success so far?
That's a tough one. I think the most rewarding thing is that, seeing the fruition of your labor, where, I play 8 years now, so it's a nice feeling knowing that I'm comfortable financially, but still, I have goals that I want to achieve in the business side and financial wise. So I think that's one thing that's gives me a bit of peace of mind. But then a ritual, I guess I could say it now. I just started drinking coffee these last couple of months. So when we get a day off over here after a game, my wife and I take Our son, we go for a little drive to this Australian coffee place up in this cool neighborhood. And yeah, we just sit there for about an hour, drink our coffee and have a bit of breakfast. And I think that's a pretty rewarding ritual just after, a big week. And then you have your day off. And yeah, that's a bit of tranquility, I guess, at the end of the week that I really look forward to.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Mate, final question, and it's a big one. If I gave you a microphone that spoke to every single one of the 7.7 billion people that are currently alive in the world, and I gave you 1 minute to talk, what would you say?
First of all, I'd tell them to get financially educated. I think that schools don't do a great job in teaching us how to better ourselves in the money side of things. They teach us, math and English and science and all those great things that we need. But you need to invest in yourself in terms of reading. You need to know how to pay bills, how to pay rent, what insurance is, how to get passive income. And I think those are the main things. I think for all those people out there that, when they leave school, that shouldn't be when you stop learning. That should be when you start learning for yourself. When you're in school, you're getting taught what you need to be taught. But when you leave school or when you leave university, that's when you should start learning for yourself and read books and read articles that interest you. And I think money interests everybody. And that's something that you should really prioritize in learning about, because if you want to do what you want to do in life and get ahead, the resources are out there, and it's just up to you whether you want to learn about it or not and put the time in, because it's definitely worth it in the end.
Yeah, great message to close on, mate. It's funny that some Australians embrace money as a friend. A lot of people have a lot of fear around money, and it's like learning a language. If you just keep at it, then you're going to get it. It's not something you're born with. It's not like you've got a head for figures or you don't. It's just a matter of applying yourself and, as you say, keep learning day to day, because if you're learning every day, then your knowledge is just going to expand over time, mate. So love the time that you've spent with us, Brock. It's been very engaging. It's just great to see us doing so well on the court, and I love the fact that you're thinking long and hard about what you're doing to set yourself up for life after the game. Quite inspirational to other players that will be going on a similar journey. So looking forward to staying in touch with you, mate, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thanks a lot, Bushy. Pleasure's all mine. I appreciate your time for having me here.
Terrific, mate. Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. It's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get-invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die